So Jeju Island is located southernmost part of the Korean peninsula, and it's an island province, and it's the biggest island in South Korea. And about by flight from the capital city Seoul, it takes about 1 hour, so about 800 kilometers for a plane to fly. And there are now several international flights, direct flights to especially east coast of the mainland China, and also some parts in some cities in Japan, like Osaka and Tokyo. And there used to be a direct flight to Taipei, the capital city of Taiwan. But now the service has finished. So there are several international flights along the east coast between the cities located along the east coast of the mainland China and Jeju Island. So it's about all 2 hours flight to the major city in neighboring other countries, from Jeju Island and Tokyo. Yeah. So, and about 1 hour from the capital city Seoul to Jeju Island. And this is Okinawa. And this is Okinawa. You see? So if you look into the shape of Jeju Island, it's like a stretched potato. It looks like a stretched potato. The geography, the topography of the island Okinawa is different. It's a long line, you know. But Jeju Island is looking like that. So people live along the coastline. It's called the coastal community. If you visit Jeju Island, you see the community, the fishing community along the coastal line. And this coastal line is about 250 kilometers, 258 kilometers. And there's now also nice drive road along the coast. Nice ocean road. You can drive, you rent a car and you drive the coastline. About 200 kilometers. The driving road is about 200 kilometers, but total coastline is about 258 kilometers. And total area is 1,848 square kilometers. So it's 3 times bigger than the capital city of Seoul. So it's much larger in size. So 3 times bigger than the capital city of Seoul in size, but much smaller population. In Seoul, it's about 9 million, 10 million sometimes. Now the population decreasing in Seoul, but the population history, the story regarding population in Jeju Island is now increasing. It used to be like 200,000, 300,000, and 500,000. And it's now about more than 600,000, increasing. That's another big story to talk about social change in Jeju Island. So people normally live along the coastline. You know, fishing community, they live along the coastlines. And then those community who raise up the pigs and cows, you know, cattle, they along live the mountain area. And in the center of the island, there is a Halla Mountain, which is the highest point in Korea, in South Korea. In South Korea, that's the highest point in South Korea. The mountain named Halla Mountain. So people live along the mountain area and people living along the coastline. So you choose which area you want to choose. The culture traditionally quite different. People living along the coastline, they live upon the sea. They live upon the sea. Their economy, to feed their stomach, they live upon the sea. You know, and the people living around the mountain, they live upon the animal, the cattle, livestock, cattle. You know. But then the Jeju Island was designed as a tourist place, by the central government from the late 60s and early 70s. And then if you visit Jeju Island, the atmosphere, each place is quite different. And this difference was made by the tourism development. If tourism development intensified, particularly here is the Jungmun tourist complex area, the atmosphere is very, very different. Very rich, a lot of rich hotels. So the big money, like Samsung, Lotte, the big money, those big money, they invest in tourism development in these areas because it has very good views, very good ocean views, very nice sea views and nice beaches, So some coastal communities, they have nice beaches, but some communities, fishing communities, they don't have beaches, only rocks and so on. So those fishing communities, their living areas have beaches. It can be a good place for investing tourism development. So now this here is the Seongsan area. It's the second big spot for tourism development, particularly for serving Chinese tourists. Used to be 80s and 90s. Here it's the first big spot for tourism development, but now it's the second spot. And some area, particularly here, in terms of tourism development, not much has been developed that much compared to here and here. And the second airport was the international airport is here. And then second airport was considered to be located here, but there was some very, conflict among local people and so on and so on. But now the plan has been postponed, pending. And then here is a Jeju city area. So the mountain divide north and south. So it's a Jeju city area, it's a Seogwipo city area. So from here to arriving Seogwipo area, it takes about 1.5 and 2 hours. And from here to here also about 2 hours. And if you want to take a bus and to all along the coastal line of, very strange. It takes about 3 hours, 3 or 4 hours, if we make a turn, along the coastlines, but on a bus, about 4 hours, you see. So east and west about 73 kilometers, and north and south about 32 kilometers. So I said from north and south, it's about 32 kilometers long and 74 kilometers wide from east and west, and about 1,848 square kilometers. And mountain highlight is at 1,950 meters high. So the population keeping increasing, and now about more than 0.6 million. And those population increase is made by the immigration from the mainland. So the mainland, what I'm saying mainland, the mainland of Korea. Here I say mainland of Korea, so it's island. So now population is increasing for the past 10 years. So it's now over 600,000, and the population increase has been made by the immigration from the mainland. So two different residential areas along the coastal lines and along the mountain areas. So the fishing community, the member of fishing communities consist of fishers and women divers, and they live along the coastal lines. And then, but then the fishing community memberships along the coastal lines is quite different. And Jeju Island was known to the western world as the island of Kuocw. So Kuocw, I think it's a French some part, Gelpa, so Lildu Gelpa. That's the Hendrik Hammel's diary of 13 years day. So Hammel is a quite famous name in Korean history because the ship was by accident arrived in Jeju Island, and they ended up spending 13 years in South Korea, in Korea, and 3 or 4 years they stayed in Jeju Island, and Hammel recorded all the diaries for his 13-year stay, including his stay in Jeju Island. So that was the very first record that was by which Jeju Island was introduced to the western part. So in Dutch language first, because Hammel was a Dutch guy. So Dutch, and then the book Hammel's Diary was translated into English, and there are several English versions. And if you can find these two references, which I'm looking for, the first one is called The Island of Gelpa. That was published in 1905. In the journal Bulletin of the American Geographical Society. So there are about 12 pages journal article which talk about the early 20th lives of the islanders. And then second one, the 1926, published in 1926, authored by Burnett Hall, and then journal title is Gelpa Island and its people. Published in Geographical Review. I think these two are American geographers. So basically they visited the Jeju Island in the early 20th century. So these are the literature. If you want to know about the many years back, how Jeju Islanders lived at the times. And Jeju Island has been the periphery in South Korea. What I'm saying, the periphery is a Marxist term to refer to the places in terms of political, economic, cultural power. So in Korea, Seoul, capital city, is a core. It's a core, you know. So some places, if they consider the core place, they have a political and economic and cultural powers. So what I'm saying, political power, those people have important decisions, they live in Seoul, and those people, and then in terms of regional economic output, those like the capital city or Busan, or the cities along the east coastline of South Korea, they are much richer than west part. For example, those cities in Jeolla province. So what I'm saying, politically, economically, cultural periphery, Jeju Island. Jeju Island has been politically not strong, and economically not rich, and culturally not well known compared to the core or semi-peripheral regions. And particularly, if you look back to the history, the relationship between the mainland and Jeju Island is somehow like an unequal relationship. So the people in Jeju Island, they give tributary, some to the areas in core area, to the king in Seoul, in Joseon area, Joseon period. Yeah. And then those who are punished as a political regions, they were sent to Jeju Island as a political exiles, as a punishment. So Joseon period and the previous years time also, the relationship between Jeju Island and mainland of Korea is somehow unequal relationship. In 20th century, there are the ideologically charged, very harsh political event That is called the April 3rd, and it's a massacre. It's a big massacre. It's about 30,000 islanders were killed by political reasons. Between 1940 and 1953, about 30,000 people. So about 1 out of 10, I think. 1 out of 8. They are killed. So a lot of people were killed, and that's been somehow, well, not the event April 3rd was not allowed to talk publicly until the late 80s, because it's a very ideologically, ideological charged turmoil. And economic terms, in terms of economy, Jeju Island is poor and underdeveloped, because the main economy of Jeju Island is a fishing industry and agriculture industry and tourism industry. So compared to the areas like Seoul or like the East Coast, cities in East Coast, in terms of industrialization, Jeju Island, the change was never made for Jeju Island. The industrialization was never made for Jeju Island. When, for example, 70s and 80s, when a lot of industrial complexes were built along the east coast of South Korea and around Seoul and around the Seoul areas, Jeju Island has never experienced that kind of change. I'll explain more why Jeju Island compared to the core areas, capital city, and those cities which have succeeded in hosting industrial facilities, why Jeju Island has been poor economically. In a cultural term, Jeju Island was considered kind of traditional and not modernized and unsophisticated. So their way of living lifestyles is somehow like unsophisticated and very traditional compared to the modern or urban sophisticated styles shared by people living in Seoul or some other cities that saw industrialization earlier in the 70s and 80s. Okay, now I talk about fishing community in Jeju Island. Fishing community, you can find them along the coastlines of Jeju Island. So there was the major industry, and also the agriculture industry was another earning money, the activity for earning money. And fishing community, their activities are arranged by fishing village cooperatives. So if you want to do any kind of fishing activities for earning income in Jeju Island, you have to be a member of fishing village cooperative. So you have to pay for the entrance fee and so on and so on. There are 100 fishing village cooperatives in Jeju Island. So along the coastline, you see a lot of fishing communities, and they are members of fishing village cooperatives. So each region, demarcated by administrative unit, they have 10 different separate fishing village cooperatives, and the membership is 12,994 members, including fishers and women divers. And fishing village cooperatives was introduced based upon the fishery corporation law, and any place in Korea, if you do fishing activities for earning income, for earning money, they should be fishing village cooperative members, and that was enacted by the law, fishery corporation law. Okay, so if you think about the total fishers or total women divers in South Korea, compared to the total membership of fishing village cooperatives of South Korea, the members of Jeju Islanders account to about 8% for the total population, total membership of fishing village cooperatives in South Korea. The Jeju Island's membership of fishing village cooperative accounts for about 8%. And as I said, along the coastline, you see 100 different fishing village cooperatives, but the membership size is different. Some fishing village cooperative has large members, about 639, but some fishing village cooperative, very small number, only 19 members. And there are common fishing grounds. So if you think about, so I said people living along the coastline, they live upon the sea, floor of sea, right? Because it's an island province. And then there are common fishing ground. There are two types. One is a first and second. First type and second type. And then there are different areas for fishers. There are different fishing ground areas. One area for fishers and the other area is for women divers. And that is a common ground. Mm-hmm. So okay. So now I talk about in terms of social change for a fishing community in Jeju Island. Social change, right? So I consider 4 factors are important. For me, it's my theory. For me, it's 4 factors important to predict the future of fishing community in Jeju Island. One is a fishing ground difference. So some fishing village cooperative has a very good fishing ground in terms of biodiversity. So what I'm saying, if the fishing ground's biodiversity is well secured, the future fishing community will be sustained because the seawater supports the future of fishing community. If there is no fish, there will be no fisher. So if the fishing ground, if it's healthy, in terms of biodiversity, the fishing community upon which fishing community members rest upon for their economy will sustain. They can keep continuing their fishing activities. And the second is the size of women divers. Some fishing village cooperative has a very small number of women divers, and some fishing village cooperative has a larger number of women divers. And for me, I consider the size of women divers also determine the future of fishing community in Jeju Island. And the third factor I consider important to talk about the future of fishing community in Jeju Island is a natural scenery for whether it has a good view to look at. So if the fishing village cooperative has a good view, commands a good view, whether it has mountains or beach or valleys and so on, they can attract the tourism invest money. Basically, Jeju Islanders are not rich, so even if they want to invest their money upon tourism development, they cannot because they are not that rich. So normally, those who have big money from the mainland, 70s and 80s, 90s, the big money is mainly Jeju, the Samsung, Lotte, those big companies. They invest their money for tourism development in Jeju Island, and now it's Chinese money, Chinese big money, So those fishing community has a good view, natural scenery. They can attract tourism invest money, And 4 is whether their activities are also combined with the agricultural products. So people living along the coastline, they do fishing activity plus agricultural activity. So they also raising agricultural products. Because if you only live upon fishing activities, Sometimes the weather is not good for sailing to the sea. So you can utilize those times for raising agricultural products. And so many people living in Jeju Island, those people living along the coastline, have fishing activities and have agricultural products, raising agricultural products. And those who have lived along the mountain area, they raise cattle and they raise agricultural products. So it's two economic activities are combined to support the economy. So some fishing communities, for their raising agricultural products, some have good diversity in terms of the agricultural product. So diversity is all the time important, because if you rest upon just one or two, that gives you some risk. Okay, so these are the 4 factors I consider important to predict the future of fishing community in Jeju Island. And now I talk about women divers. Okay, women divers you can find along the coastal line, east coastline of Korea, and this and Jeju Island. But Jeju Island is considered as the mecca for women divers. In terms of numbers, it's a lot more women divers you can find in Jeju Island. But you can also find women divers along the coastline, east coastline of Korean Peninsula. And if you travel to Japan, there are also divers in Japan. But one thing which is very different between Japan and Korea is that you can also find men divers in Japan. But in Korea, it's a totally female work. Diving work is a totally female work. In Japan, it is not. There are men and women, men divers and women divers. But in Korea, it's a totally female work. Diving is a totally female work. So you see the red circle? You see the red circle? You see this one? This red circle indicates the distribution of men divers in Japan. You see, Japan is also an island country, and they make a full utilization of seawater resources. A lot of seafood, very diversity in fishery products. Also manufactured products using the fisher. But anyway, along the coastline here and here, you see the men and women divers. So it's a yellow circle indicates women divers, the distribution of women divers, and red circles indicate men divers. But in Korea, you cannot see men divers. It's totally women's work. Totally, it's a female's work. Why is that? Why this difference? What do divers do? What do they do? It's not for leisure activities. It's for economy, for earning money, right? Diving for pleasure or for leisure. You just dive and then you see all the sceneries on the seawater. But diving for making money, for feeding your stomach, for earning money, you have to catch underwater either fish or seashells and so on, and you sell them in a market, and you earn money, right? But in Japan, it's half it's not gender biased work. It's men and women. They are all involved in diving work, but in Korea, it's only women's work. Gender biased. Why is that? What do you think so about this difference between Japan and Korea? Okay, can you write down in your textbook why there's a difference between South Korea and Japan for doing diving, for earning money? Why for South Korea it's only women's work, and for Japan it's equally men and women's work? Why is that? Okay, may I collect some responses for my question? 순서?
I think because men try to fish by boat.
Huh? So they do not want to go under the boat. Why? They want to travel far away using their boat. Okay, okay. But why in Japan? They do not want to travel far away. Okay. Difficult to answer? But because you are a sociologist, you can use sociological imagination. You see, for the same identical work, but for some culture, like South Korean culture, it is considered as it's a woman's work. But for Japanese culture, it's considered as both men and women's work. So it's a very interesting point to think about sociologically. 원시?
I think it's because of traditional values and Confucianism, maybe. Because I heard that now divers wear diving suits, but in the past they did not wear any suits. They just went into the water naked. And like in Korean values, when women and men became adults, they were separated. It was normal to be separated, so maybe that's the reason.
Yes. Partly, yeah, partly. There's the literature that mentioned that many years back, the divers, they dive just naked bodies. So from the point of the Confucianist culture, they it emphasized hierarchy among society members, between king and followers, between men and women, between wives and husbands, and between so on, between men and women. So from the perspective of Confucius culture, it is not allowed. It is not allowed, particularly, it is not allowed, men and women, they dive naked. So from the perspective of Confucian culture, it totally, not acceptable, totally not acceptable, And there's another reason. So scholars explain that way. Confucianist culture, that might be the key reason that male divers, they gave up or they disappeared, from the diving work, in Korea. Okay. So here are some photos for women divers in Jeju Island, and as I mentioned, you can find also women divers in east coast of South Korea and some part in west coast. So in Jeju Island, in an island province, there's no industrial basis, which means there's not much thing you can earn money. So there's not much work, but then here's full of water, and there's full of the fish and so on. So fishing industry developed, but then somehow Confucius culture, they valued agricultural products and they devalued the fishing activities. The reason, even if the Korea is the peninsula, the mainland is surrounded by 3 areas surrounded by sea, and Jeju Island is full of sea. But then compared to the other countries which are surrounded by full of sea, the fishery industry has not that developed because of the Confucian culture. They devalued fishery work, and they valued highly agricultural activities. And the reason that lies behind why Confucian culture devalued fishery work, they consider it somehow, they consider the Confucian scholars consider that doing a fishery work is somehow stealing. You do not make a full your effort. I mean, from their perspective, for example, for growing agricultural products, you plant the seeds, and you take care of the seeds until they grow up. So from the perspective of Confucian culture, it's a full commitment, and it's a quite honorary act of human beings. But then for doing fishery activities, you do not plant the seeds of the fish, right? You just go there and you just catch. So from the perspective of Confucian scholars, it's somehow not honest act for human beings. Does that make sense? No? But ask them, because I'm not a Confucian scholar, So, and then Confucius' ideology was the dominant political and cultural economic ideology during the Joseon era. So it's the master idea to define, you are right, you are wrong, you are right, you are wrong, you act right. It's all based upon the Confucius idea. So anyway, compared to the Korea is full of, surrounded by the seawater. Think about Japanese fishery industry. You see that their fishery industry has developed a lot. The technology and the way of utilizing the seawater and so on. But anyway, so in Jeju Island, if you are born in Jeju Island as a girl, you probably came to be a woman diver, particularly in the before the 50s. Before the 50s, if you are born a girl in Jeju Island, you probably became 80 or 90%. They became women divers. So in the up to the 40 or 50, the girls began their diving work very young, like 13 or 12, 14. And before they wore a diving work like that, it's a cotton cloth. But now, from the 60s and 70s, the government imported the rubber swimsuit, so you can resist much longer hours under the seawater, especially winter time. You can spend much longer hours under the water. So you dive into like this, and you collect seashells or whatever, depending upon your skills, and you collect them inside of the bags, the floating bag, and you swim to the shore. And you do this work as on a collective basis. No one goes on an individual level. They move together like this. They move together. They move even on a boat trip. They move on a collective. It's a collective act. So you do not go alone. So these are the products women divers collect under the seawater, like octopus and sea cucumbers and top shells, brown alga, green alga, seagrass, and abalone, and sea urchin. These are the major seawater products, seafood products collected by women divers. Okay. And now I'll talk about the population change among women divers community from 1966 up to 2010. As I said, if you are born in Jeju Island as a girl, it's a more than 50% chance you become a woman diver. From the 13, 14 years old and up to very young. Up to very old. So 1966 statistics told us the total women divers population size about 23,000, but now it's only 5,000. So it's a steep decrease for the past 40 or 50 years. And then one day people consider it will be hitting the bottom like a zero. So not sustainable. As we looked at last week, we thought about sustainability, and then the Roma Club, they predict the future of the human community will not be sustainable in terms of the unavailability of natural resources for supporting the economy of human beings. There's another sustainability issue. So if this pattern in steep decreasing among women divers community, one day there will be no one, no women diver at least in Jeju Island, because in Korea, even if there are women divers, some other parts of the coastlines in Korea, but people often consider women divers only available in Jeju Island, and it's considered the symbol of women divers and so on. But at least for Jeju Island, women divers, if this population decrease pattern will keep maintaining, one day, maybe 40 years after or 70 years after, there will be no women diver in Jeju Island. So now it's a big issue how to increase the population of women divers. Now it's a big issue. It's a local government issue and central government issue and so on. And now I ask second question: why decrease? Why decrease of women divers in numbers in Jeju Island? Why this change? So 60 is about 23,000, and 70 is about 14,000, and 80s is a dramatic fall. from 7,800, and now it's about 5,000. And one day will be 3,000, 2,000, and 1,000. And now I'm asking why the decrease? Why this the population change? Why the decrease of women divers in numbers?
Because South Korea started industrialization since 1960, and the Jeju Island was not.
What's not, sorry?
Was not an exception to that tendency.
You think so?
Industrialization.
Ah, okay, so it's the industrialization effect. Okay. Can you respond? Writing in your textbook. Okay. May I ask? Okay. Shio?
I think we have three reasons to respond the decrease. The first one is aging problem. The women become old and they cannot go outside fishing anymore. Secondly is the starvation. Some young women they go to the mainland and development their career. The first one is tourist industry develop, and people give up fishing and develop tourist industry more than motor fishing.
Okay, good, excellent. Okay, so we can think about. We can think about the effect of industrialization, as Hobin mentioned, right? The effect of industrialization. So industrialization began in South Korea from the late 60s and early 70s, right? Late 60s and early 70s. So before that, everybody were farmers, everybody were fishers, and everybody raised cattle. That is called agricultural society. But from the 70s, South Korea transformed industrial society. That means people worked in a factory, people worked in an office as a clerk, as a white collar worker, right? Yeah, so we can think about the effect of industrialization for South Korea, but basically in Jeju Island, the effect of industrialization was not directly made to for Jeju Island. What I'm saying, not directly made for Jeju Island. There were very few industrial facilities. If you visit Jeju Island, you will not find any big big buildings or any big factories and so on. The industrial facilities are very few. You can see only small part of Jeju Island. It's called Hwabuk. Pabuk industrial area, but very few. But I can say the effect of industrialization upon women, upon the lives of women in Korea, including the women in Jeju Island. So the first key factor is a woman coming to be a university student. You know, women coming to be women. They want to be educated. So if you are born like before 50s and particularly before 50s, for women, it's to become a university graduate. It's very difficult story. It's a very difficult thing to read, to obtain. But from the 80s, women also entered the university to study. So you see the big drop. So we can see the effect of industrialization coming with the opening of the university for women. So women choose to study in a university rather than keeping their work in a seawater. And another thing means somehow more diversity in work was made. So before up to 50s and 60s, only the work available is to work in seawater. But after the industrialization, there are more diverse works are available, so women can choose. Women can choose. They don't have to be a woman diver. They can choose their career, particularly if they're educated. And they can also come to the mainland, you know, to pursue another career than a woman diver, right? So the principal factor to explain the decrease of women divers community in Jeju Island is the effect of industrialization, and particularly the opportunity of education opening for women. And there's another thing, the more diversity in work, so you can choose. There are more options to choose for work. Not only for men, but for women. And another thing, there are some negative meaning for diving work. So there's some negative meaning, negative value attachment for diving work. It was considered as a low job. So it's not a job respected. So you cannot brag that, oh, I'm a woman diver. You know, you can say, you know, you are very shy, or you are ashamed to say I'm a woman diver. You know. So it's not a job respected by other people. So particularly, you know, okay, I'm a woman diver, but I would rather want my daughter will become a woman diver following me. Because, you know, it's not a job respected by other society members. But now things have changed all of a sudden, and it's become the UNESCO. It's designated as something UNESCO, the property, the cultural property, so on. But you should be able to explain why this deep decrease in women divers among the women divers community in Jeju Island. And there's another thing that Xiong mentioned, the women divers becoming aged. That means it's more possibility for women divers to die, you know. So that means that young divers, they have not replaced the old divers. That's why the population decreasing. Even if the old divers, they retired and then they die, but if women divers keeping becoming a women diver, the population stabilized, not decreasing. So you see the 1970, the population size breakdown by the age composition. For 1970, it's up to 20s, it's about 30%. So 1 out of 1 out of 3 women divers is the 20s, so very young, like you. And another 40%, another 50% is between 30 and 40, between 30 and 40. So in 1970s, women divers are very young, but in 2011, women divers are very old. You cannot find 30 and 40 in 2011. Sorry, you cannot find the 20s women divers in Jeju Island, not anymore. From up to 1990, there are very few numbers of 20s women divers. But for the past 10 or 15 years, there's 20s women divers disappeared. And now 30 and 40 women divers disappeared. And most of them either 50, 60, or 70. So they are very young, they are very old. So which means those people who started women diving, who started diving, they continue their work until they are old. But in between, in the times along, in between, there's no young woman. There's very few young women became a women diver. That's why the women divers community became very old. Aging problem among our women divers community. Okay, now I talk about membership of fishing community. Not focusing upon fishers, I talk about women divers. Women divers are members of fishing community, members of fishing village cooperatives. For fishers, numbers also steep decrease, and now it's about 8,000. Right. So if you consider fishing community in Jeju Island, it's about 13,000 in numbers. But if you consider the families that attached to the members, there probably are more population in Jeju Island living upon the seawater, for their economy. And the Jeju Island fishers account of 8% of the total fisher numbers for South Korea, about 8%. Okay. Here is a seaport. So you can find the seaports along the coastal lines of the Jeju Island, and there are big port and small port in terms of how many boats the port can host, can park. There are small port and big port. Like a port in Seongsan is a big port. Seongsan port and Halim and Seogwipo, they are the major big ports. So you can see a lot of boats are parking. But there are also small port, but very few boats are parked. This is also small port. You see, only just 10 or over there in Seongsan port, you will see about 40 or 50 boats. Probably a lot more than the other side of port, because I took a photo on this area. Mm-hmm. Okay, and here's the fishing vessels. You see there are some big boat and small boat. They all is a different size, and that means how far you can travel in the seawater. How far you can travel. If you have a big vessel, you can travel much longer time. You see, that means you can fish those living deep water and shore area. The fishes are different in terms of the areas they prefer to live, the depths of depending upon the depth of seawater. Normally, big fish, where do they live? Big fish, where do they live? Near to the shoreline or the far out of the shoreline? They live far, far away from the shoreline, and they're expensive. But in Jeju Island, normally the boats are, the size is between 1 to 5 tons. So tons means the different size of the fishing vessels. Different size of fishing vessels. And if the boats are over 10 tons, it's a quite big boat. But normally those boats are parked in whatever ports in Jeju Island. It's between 1 to 10. And majority of them is between 1 to 5 tons. 1 to 5 tons. And the fishers in Jeju Island, they catch this. So hairtail fish from Jeju Island is a very famous seafood product. Jeju Island hairtail fish is very famous and very expensive. Very expensive, very famous and very expensive. And now it's difficult to find. It's difficult to find. You have to travel far away over the seashore. So they live in deep water, and it's very popular, not only in Jeju Island but also in mainland as a seafood, but it's quite expensive. Particularly Jeju Island hairtail fish, it's very popular. Everybody wants to eat, everybody wants to buy, but now it's very difficult to find. And dam shellfish, and that is a Thai fish. And there is yellowtail, squid, and rockfish. There are other also kinds of fish that are caught by Jeju Island fishers. Okay, now I'll talk about negative marine ecosystem change in the island. The seawater is the very ground to support the livelihood of fishing community in Jeju Island. So the health of seawater is the health, that directly means the health of fishing community, right? But now observe the negative change in the marine ecosystem in Jeju Island. And if you visit Jeju Island, you probably have as a tourist, you only see the beautiful thing, but there's also a very painful thing, you know, you have to see in Jeju Island. And one of them is this. The stone used to be like that, and it's a healthy stone. What I'm saying health is the sea plants, they can grow, you know, above the stone. But now the stones become like a cement. So on cement, no lively thing can grow. And it's also same story with the stones in Jeju Island seawater. Stones became cemented, which means that sea plants that the women divers catch, like a seagrass or brown alga, you know, green alga, or they cannot grow these cemented stones. The stone had changed this way, so it's a became barren, you know, infertile. So sea plants, they cannot grow this. Oh la la. So stones along the coastlines, they changed this way, and that means no plants cannot grow under the stone like this. So it became cemented. You know cement? You know asphalt? You know soil, in a brown, very healthy soil, you can grow like a plants and, you know, vegetables. It's the same story with the marine environment. Stones are very important soil for seawater. But in Jeju Island, this kind of negative change has been observed, and I took photos, along the coastline. You see, cemented, so that the seashells also they live upon the stone. Seashells they also cannot live in here. It's a barren, it's infertile. It's nothing to live on. So you see this change along the coastlines of Jeju Island. If you visit next time, you see the colors are different. These are the very famous spot in west side, Ewol, the ocean road. It's a very nice driving road. And now the fishing community transformed the houses that are lived by the fishing community members now turned to be hotels, resorts, and then guest houses, cafes. A lot of cafes now along the coastlines in Jeju Island. A lot of cafes. But before, traditionally, along the coastline, they lived by the fishing community members, women divers and fishers and so on. But you see the difference, no? From the far away view, you see the stones I showed, the stones whose covers became cemented, very abundant, occupied very big areas, So which means the stones a bit far away from the shoreline also had to change their covers like the way I showed you. You see? The stones changed this way. So it should be like that, but it has changed this way. So it's called barren ground. Barren ground has spread all over the many parts of the Jeju Island coastlines, which is a quite sad story for the future fishing community, which is quite sad and quite troubling story for the sustainability of fishing community in Jeju Island. So the seawater has become unhealthy, and you can see these are the kind of indicator. The seawater has been quite not healthy or dirty. You see some parts the stones has turned this way. Very strange change. It used to be this way, but some parts of stones they changed their colors white. So it all indicates what the future fishing community will be like in 10 years and 20 years. If you are concerned about the sustainability issue for the Jeju Islanders, like that, So you can observe this change with your naked eyes. So nothing can grow under the stones of this, the white stones. So cemented stones become cemented. Yes. So stone used to be like black stone, but then it has covered with this what is called? I say it's cement. Become cement, So very hard. If you touch it, very hard, very rushed. But if you touch the covers, these black stones, it's a very soft and so on. But the different the feeling by your touching. Okay, so these all connected story with the fishing community, for the future of fishing community, and then the negative marine ecosystem change along the Jeju Island coastlines. Okay, we'll have a break up to 12 o'clock. Okay, so these are the negative changes that have been observed for the past several years that indicate the difficult future for the fishing community, because it's a all connected system between the marine ecosystem and social system that includes fishing community in Jeju Island. So with the unhealthy condition of the fishing grounds, that means the reduction of fishery products that are caught by women divers and fishers that are likely to be decreased accordingly, because the plants, sea plants, they cannot grow over these the cemented stones, and that also indicates the fishes they live upon the sea plants. The fishes who eat the sea plants, who grow up in the in stones, for them it means also lack of food for fishes. For fishes. So it's all connected system. Just sea plants and seashells, fish. They cannot find a good place to stay, to live on. So that means sea plants and fish and then seashells. These are all the products, seawater, sea products that are caught by women divers and fishers in Jeju Island for their livelihoods, for their economy, has been decreased. And it means the difficult. It presents a difficult future for the fishing community in Jeju Island. And now I'll talk about the touristic transformation of the fishing community in Jeju Island. That is among one of my research topic, one of my research interests, to address the tourist transformation of fishing community in Jeju Island. So you will see, as I mentioned, the key major industry in Jeju Island is the primary and tertiary, so tourism industry. And the secondary industry bases are very limited. But if you draw the chart like this for Seoul or for Busan or for Daejeon or for Ulsan, probably the economic output for the secondary industry will be the over 50%. And then particularly for Seoul, will be the secondary and tertiary industry will be the major dominant industries to support the economy of Seoul, people living in Seoul. So primary base is very limited here. This one, no? Okay, but then for Jeju Island, primary and tertiary industry is the major income base for Jeju Islanders. So tourism industry is now becoming bigger and bigger, and you can see a lot of tourism-based facilities are under construction, and also to support the arrivals of tourists. And now you can see a lot of tourists every day. Jeju Island airport is all the time crowded. So to support the need of tourists that are arriving Jeju Island, which are alarmingly larger number than ever before, you see the number of tourists arriving Jeju Island, 80s and 90s, 2007, and now 2017. It's a steep increase. So women divers, steep decrease. But for tourists arriving Jeju Island, a steep increase. Well, in the 80s, our numbers are just very near in the 80s because everybody's busy to work. and people work from Monday to Saturday, half Saturday. And now we work, the 5-day working schedule is adopted as an institution in 2005. So people want to go outside of the urban area to take a fresh air, So in the 80s, 1985, here's only the 100,000, 1 million in the 80s, arriving Jeju Island tourists, about 1 million, but in 2007, about 5 million, and now it's 10 million. And people said the number of tourists arriving Jeju Island will be keeping increasing. So if you visit Jeju Island, you see a lot of cafes, and also some other theme parks, and hotels and so on. Those are all facilities that are aiming to support the needs of tourists arriving. And also construction business. Now you see a lot of constructions everywhere, like houses and so on. Because I said not only tourists but also residents, so immigrants from the mainland, they came to Jeju Island to settle down, particularly 30s and 40s, and some people are 50s. They came to Jeju Island to settle down, so they have to find some work to live upon, So many is to support the tourists. So guest houses, they open guest houses and coffee shops and so on. So my key research interest is to know, the changing shape of the coastline. So the coastline traditionally was lived by fishing community that includes women divers and fishers. But then immigrants moving to Jeju Island, and they settled down along the coastline because it's a nice view. The seawater just in front of you. You take just 5 minutes and you just see water. So, what I want to know, one of my research interests is to know the steep increase of tourists, and then also the inflow of the immigrants from the mainland. How do they will change the outlook of the Jeju Island in the future? That's one of my research interests, but it's still ongoing. You see the steep increase. So 10 million in 2012, it was recorded 10 million. So it's a big number. Compared to the tourists arriving in Okinawa, I heard that it's about 1 million, 2 million, not that big number. 10 million is a big number. So you see the traffic, the flight traffic between Jeju and Gimpo is the busiest the route in the world, to believe or not. But that indicates a lot of people moving between Jeju and Gimpo nowadays. So that means that people are increasing. Those people who can support, who can pay for their leisure activities, for their travel. With the increase of GMP, and you see you can find many parts of Jeju Island now has turned to a tourism product. Even the Ole is traditionally meaning the Jeju dialect meaning it's just your areas, your living areas. Those areas you will see walking out of your door. Those areas you walk, it's called Ole in Jeju Island dialect. But now those spaces are turned to for serving tourists. So tourists visit those spaces. You consider just mundane, nothing special. But tourists come to walk those spaces, and the spaces cover the coastlines and mountain areas. Yes, so with the increase of tourists and with the increase of immigrants from the mainland moving to Jeju Island to settle down, the outlook of Jeju Island has changed. So those people who immigrate to Jeju Island to have another second life, mainly for their economy, for their work, they open like those tourism-related facilities, like cafes and guest houses. If you do not have that much money, the small, medium-sized, the tourist facilities they open. And if you have a big money, you construct very big hotels. So, and now I'll talk about another tourist transformation for women divers in Jeju Island. As I mentioned already, women divers is the fishery workers. They are workers who live upon, who work upon seawater to catch fishery products like seashells, top shells, and seagrass, and brown alga, and octopus, But then, with the intensive tourism inflow from the mainland and from also other countries like China and so on, Jeju Island women diver has turned to be a symbol for Jeju Island tourism. So, if you ever visit Jeju Island, you will see this kind of sculptures along the coastlines. You see this kind of sculptures along the coastlines. For me, they look quite funny. So it's basically to entice the gaze of tourists, and then tourists. I saw many tourists. They take a photo with these sculptures, like So these are the many for tourists to attract the gaze of tourists, particularly to take a photo with them. And they are many. You can see along the coastline. You will see them a lot. And I found this photo, which I find very interesting. Fortunately, this is not a woman diver. It's just a model, Women diver, they never wear like this. They never wear bikini. This photo originally was published in 1973. And there's a locally based the magazine Monthly Jeju. They duplicated this image for the cover of the magazine. And 2 or 3 years back, I found this image in Hangul newspaper, and they gave the title Jeju Woman Diver, which is totally not true. So Jeju Woman Diver, they will never make this kind of posture. So it's for tourists. It's not the real presentation of women divers, So you see the posture of this woman. It's just very like a model, pose for a model to attract your attention. And as I showed you already, women diver, they in the past they wore like a cotton cloth, and then. After the 70s, the rubber suit were imported from Japan after the 70s, 80s. So for doing work under the seawater, women diver, they never ever wear a bikini. If you wear like this, you cannot resist under the water. It becomes very cold quickly. For swimming, for leisure, you can wear whatever you want, no problem. But for a work, it's not a proper outfit. But people believe that women dive with this image, but which is totally not true. So it's just an imagination. But people living in urban area in the mainland of Korea, they consider Jeju Island as a fantasy, because it's an island full of seawater, okay, I want to escaped from this very difficult urban life and want to fly far away to Jeju Island to have a fresh air, blah blah blah. But then there are also people who try to work, who try to live open, who try to live on, and for that you have to work, So, but then the imaginary made by the people living in urban areas put the women workers catching sea products on the seawater. They put them into this very imaginary, very sexy, very attractive, very model posed woman. And you will find this kind of very happy, very this kind of sculptures along the coastlines, and very very slim body and so on and so on. So if you look at this, the diving work probably it's very like a fun and leisure work. But if you listen to the stories told by women divers, they say it's a very hard work. I would never recommend. Under the ground, you have to be very careful, not to be too greedy to catch the sea product, because they dive without the breathing aid, and if you become greedy to catch more products beyond your breathing capacity, they will claim your life on the seawater, and you will die. You are likely to die. So it's also part of with the intensive development tourism that bring upon the women divers. So women divers became quite imaginary, very full of femininity, sexy woman to attract tourists. But which is far from reality of women divers. And some sculptures, they describe women diver in this way. I think this is more real, that close to the reality of women divers compared to this. So it's a very different projection for women diver in this way, and in this way. And in this way. And you see the women divers, they also used to wear like a cotton cloth, the white top, and then the trunk, black trunk. And there's a women divers museum, and it's a photo I collected from the website of Women Divers Museum. And sometimes there are topic for cartoons. And some years ago, there was a animation TV program animation with having the women divers, Jeju women divers, And Jeju women diver now they are swimming inside of the tank, the large tank, in the aquarium tank. So what do they show to tourists? What do they show to tourists? Because tourism is about looking at. And tourism is about showing, like the performances, images, sceneries. Tourism is all about catching your eyes. It's about all gazing at something, right? So what do women divers do inside of